Have you ever been stuck in that place where you just can't seem to forgive yourself for something you did, even when you know in your head that God has forgiven you? It's this painful, common struggle, right? But it's so much more than just a bad feeling. It's a deep spiritual battle over who really gets the final say in your life. Is it your own heart that keeps condemning you, or is it the God who has already declared you free? Okay, let's really dive into this. So here's what we're going to do. First, we'll look at a super famous commandment and see what it secretly assumes about us. Then we're going to jump into a powerful case study and use a modern analogy to see just how dangerous guilt can be. After that, we'll break down the spiritual mechanics of it all, find the biblical solution, and finally talk about what it really means to live in freedom. All right, so we're starting with a verse that almost everyone knows, but hidden inside it is this massive assumption that we usually just read right over. Okay, we all know this one, but let's focus on those last two words, as yourself. The whole command to love other people, it's actually measured against our ability to love ourselves. The verse just takes for granted that we have this healthy capacity for self-love, and that's the baseline for how we should treat others. And that, right there, is the big question, isn't it? How on earth are you supposed to love your neighbor as yourself if you're drowning in guilt and shame? What happens when you feel like you don't even deserve love, let alone forgiveness? You know, this is where this conversation goes way beyond just self-help tips. This inability to forgive ourselves, it's not just a little psychological hang-up. It's a heavy, spiritual weight. It's a burden that literally holds us back from living in the freedom that Jesus already bought for us. To really see what this looks like, let's check out an incredible story from the Gospel of John. The Samaritan woman at the well. She is the perfect example of someone who is totally set free from a prison of her own shame. I mean, just look at this transformation. It's radical. Before she meets Jesus, she's a total outcast. She's defined by her messy past, coming to get water in the middle of the day just so she doesn't have to face anyone. She's literally hiding. But after her one conversation with Jesus, she becomes a witness. She's not defined by her 5 husbands anymore. She's defined as the person Jesus revealed himself to. Her problem wasn't a physical sickness. It was this deep, soul-crushing guilt, and he healed it in an instant. And her story is a perfect picture of what the book of Hebrews is talking about right here. This whole idea of our hearts being cleansed from a guilty conscience. Jesus didn't just offer her water. He offered her a clean slate, a total freedom from this shame that had been running her life. And he offers us that same exact thing. So, what does it look like when we refuse to take that freedom? Let's use a little modern-day analogy that really makes the spiritual danger of holding on to guilt crystal clear. Okay, picture this. There's a guy with a debt so huge, there's just no way he could ever repay it. He's standing before the judge, and the judge slams the gavel and declares the debt paid in full because his own son paid the price. The man is 100% legally free. But then he walks out of that courtroom and keeps living like a prisoner, working and scraping to pay off a debt that doesn't even exist anymore. And that's when the accuser comes up and whispers, "You're still guilty." And the tragedy is, the man believes him. So you see the point here. The man was completely free, but he chose to live in a prison of his own making, all because he listened to an accuser who had already lost the case. When we refuse to accept the verdict of forgiveness, we're choosing to stay in the accuser's grip. Now, this isn't just some sad little story. It's a serious spiritual warning. Holding on to guilt, refusing to forgive yourself, that's not a neutral thing. You are actively opening a door for your spiritual enemy, the accuser. The Bible actually uses a specific kind of military-style word for this. It calls it a foothold. And you should think of it just like that. It's like a beachhead in a war. It's a secure spot that you hand over to the enemy, which lets them advance even further into your life. So how exactly does this work? Well, the Apostle Paul warns us not to be outwitted by Satan. And he says that one of the enemy's favorite schemes is to use unforgiveness as a weapon. See, when you refuse to forgive yourself, you are basically siding with the accuser. You're agreeing with his charges against you. You end up inviting all this spiritual poison, and you give his accusations power they were never supposed to have. In the end, it's a flat-out rejection of God's verdict. So what do we do? What do we do when our own heart won't let us off the hook? How do you fight a battle when the enemy seems to be coming from inside your own head? Well, thankfully, the Bible gives us a really clear, powerful answer. This verse, this is everything. Our feelings, our emotions, that little voice in our head that keeps condemning us, they are not the final judge. God is.
His verdict is higher than our feelings. His knowledge of what happened on the cross is way more powerful than our memory of our sin. Simply put, God is greater than our heart.
And what that means is, the solution isn't to just try harder, to muster up more feelings of self-love, or to convince yourself you're okay. Nope. The solution is to make a choice of faith. It's about appealing to a higher court. It's about standing on the truth of God's verdict, even when every single feeling inside you is screaming the opposite. Okay, let's pull all this together. What does it actually look like to stop living like that prisoner in the story and to start living in the freedom that's already yours?
This is one of the most powerful, absolute declarations in all of Scripture. So to live in self-condemnation is, well, it's basically calling this verse a lie. It's putting our own judgment, our own feelings of guilt, above God's final authoritative judgment. It's like we're saying, thanks God, but I think I know better.
So you see, accepting God's forgiveness for yourself isn't a passive, lazy thing to do. It's actually an act of worship. It is about honoring the incredible, costly sacrifice of Christ by walking in the very freedom He died to give you. Anything less is like leaving the greatest gift you've ever been given sitting on the table, unopened.
Ultimately, it all boils down to this one simple choice. There are two voices speaking over your life. You've got the accuser, who will never stop reminding you of your guilt, and you've got the judge, who has declared you acquitted, righteous, and free through His Son. Whose verdict are you going to believe?